The Daily Derech. We are walking the path of holiness.
Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, the Rabbinical Assembly, and Temple of Aaron. Today is the 6th day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 18th of Tammuz, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Friday, July 3rd, 2026. Tomorrow we will read Parashat Pinchas. Let's begin. Me'am Loez. Parashat Pinchas. We'll finish up Parashat Pinchas today and have our last conversation about this intense deed of Pinchas, of what Pinchas did to Zimri and Kozbi. But let's talk about Zimri and Kozbi. We're talking a lot about Pinchas. Let's talk about the two people who were killed by Pinchas. So number one is Zimri, and Zimri, the son of Salu, was the Nasi of. He was the sort of the prince of the Shimonite tribe. The Shimonite tribe was a particular tribe of the Bnei Israel, descending, of course, from Shimon, from Simon, one of the sons of Jacob. And so what we hear from this is that he truly was a leader amongst the Jewish people. He wasn't just some typical person, but he was really a leader of an entire tribe. Same thing actually with the Midianite woman. The Midianite woman, Cozbi, the daughter of Sur, was sort of the Torah tells us actually is also a part of the governing family in Midian. Rosh Umot Beit Av Midianhu. She is the translation in the Me'am Loez here is governor of a paternal line in Midian, which is amazing to think that the Midianites, the Me'am Loez actually notes that the Midianites were willing to give the woman of the highest stature in order to bring the Jewish people into sin. This was, of course, part of a larger tact really created by Bilam to trick the Jewish people into idolatry. First wooing the Midianite women, wooing them with their sexual ways, and then bringing the Jewish men into the worship of Baal Peor, the worship of idolatry. And so the Me'am Loez notes is that's how much the Midianites really were trying to bring the Jewish people into idolatry. They were willing to throw their best at the Jewish people, and so we can see how committed their try of doing this was. So very, very important, and that these were not just commoners per se, but they were leaders of the entire Jewish people. It's also important to know that it's interesting also the line in which Zimri comes from. Zimri actually comes from the line of Shimon. And Shimon was part of the brothers who was involved in the the first act of zealotry, which was after the rape of Dinah, the horrible incident where Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, was raped in Shechem. And Shimon was part of the team that led his brothers in to destroy the whole entire town because of it, out of anger. And we could see how much Shimon cared for his sister and the honor of the Jewish people, and to see how far and how low this actually goes in the end of what Zimri did, descending from the Shimonite line, is incredible to see how far it's fallen. It's also, of course, an irony in the fact that this was now he finds himself the target of an act by a zealot when he was originally the one who was his family was the one who was originally doing the zealous act. And I also think this is often true about zealotry, is that you get into zealotry, it serves you once, but next time what it allows is zealotry against you. So in general, zealotry is not seen as that positive of a thing. It's a kind of a crazy thing, could end up really bad. Like, for example, Nadav and Avihu, right? Example of ending up bad. Also, the example of Shimon himself, when he destroyed the whole entire town after the rape of Dinah. Obviously, it was important to be angry and try to cause justice after such an abuse of his sister, but to kill all those people was not warranted, and certainly was not seen at the time as a good thing. But this shows that eventually the one who does zealotry becomes the target of zealotry in itself. So I think it's really important to focus on who really was the target of Pinchas in this regard. Mishnah Torah. We're in Hilchot Kriyat Shema. We're going to read the chapter 2, halacha 15, 16, and you got it, 17. 3 halachot in one day. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, so this is the instance of when someone interrupts your saying of the Shema. Right? You're in shul, someone comes and interrupts you either by just approaching you in that way. What do you do about that, in particular when you're saying the Shema, right? The Shema should be uninterrupted. Although we did learn, though, that if you do interrupt your Shema and then come back to the same place, it's still considered acceptable, but this is only in a case that is after the fact, or what we'd call in Hebrew b'diavad. So the Mishnah Torah says, the following rules apply when one encounters other people or is approached by them while reciting the Shema. If he is between sections, he should stop and greet those he is obligated to honor, e.g. his father, his teacher, or anyone greater than he in learning. He may return the greetings of any person who initiates the friendly exchange. Okay, so there are going to be 3 categories that are created here. There's just regular people, right, who we are just obligated to be friendly to and kind to. There are people we're obligated to honor, okay? So there's an extra obligation of honor of one's father or mother, for that matter, one's teacher or rabbi, or anyone that actually happens to be greater than him in learning Torah. Those are people in which we are therefore obligated to honor. So there's sort of an extra requirement to always give them honor. Then on top of that, there is the king or some kind of tyrant, some kind of person who has extreme amounts of power to cause you harm, who you are afraid of. So that's the third most extreme category. So with that knowledge of these 3 categories, let's see what the Rambam says about them. He says if one is between sections, he should stop and greet those he is obligated to honor, meaning between sections of the brachot and the Shema. So anyone comes up to him, right? Well, first of all, someone who is honored, who's part of that second category, either a father, a teacher, or someone greater than them is learning, if you see that person coming, you should interrupt your Shema in between the sections and say hello to them, right? In terms of everyday people, we can only return greetings to them. So only in a case when a stranger basically comes up and says, how you doing? You're then obligated to return and say hello to them so they're not embarrassed. So you can do that between sections again. But you can't initiate a conversation with someone you're not obligated to honor in the same way, even between sections in the Shema. The halacha today we're going to learn continues in this way. What about if one is in the middle of a section? Right, and by the way, we're going to explain in just a second what is in the middle of a section of Shema, what is not considered it, but just go with me for a second. If one is in the middle of a section, he may stop and initiate an exchange of greetings only with someone who is afraid. So if you see a king or a tyrant coming, yes, you may interrupt even in the middle of the Shema, in the middle of a section, in order to say hello to a king or a tyrant so that they don't kill you, right? Because you're afraid that they're going to hurt you in some way. Now, obviously, I don't think this is only in cases of sfeik nefashot, of where this person is really going to kill you, but also is in cases just in general where they have the power to do such things, and we should have that level of awe of these people. However, he says if, let's say, a teacher says hello to you, or a rabbi or a parent says hello to you, or anyone greater in Torah learning for that matter, then you are allowed to reply to them, but you cannot offer the first greeting to them like you can between sections. Finally, that must mean, therefore, that just regular people that you're not allowed to honor, you're not even allowed to respond to them, even if they say hello to you during the Shema. This is the amount of focus we need to have when we say the Shema. But of course, we have to understand what are these different sections that are being created, and here they are. These are the intervals between the sections. Between the first blessing and the second, which is in the morning at least, Yotzer Or and Ahava Rabbah, right? That's a break between the sections, between those 2 blessings. Between the second blessing and Shema, so between Ahava Rabbah in the morning and the beginning of the Shema sentence, right, is another time when we can interrupt in this way and respond to someone in this way. Between the first and second sections of Kriyat Shema, So then now we're on the Kriyat Shema between the first and second sections, and between the second and third sections of Kriyat Shema. Between these sections, one initiates an exchange with one whom it is his duty to honor in response to the greetings of anyone. Right? So what is all these different sections here? So the first part of the Shema is Shema into Ve'ahavta. Remember I said Shema and Ve'ahavta cannot be disconnected because they come out one after the other in the Torah. The Rambam previously said that those two verses cannot be disconnected. So we always keep those together. We don't respond at that time. But we do respond after that first paragraph or after the second paragraph in that way. Lastly, surprisingly enough, he says actually that the third section of Kriyat Shema Vayomer should be attached to Emet V'Yatziv, the third blessing about redemption, and that should be considered the middle of a section, and one may not interrupt in those areas except for the things that we listed above. So all to tell you how important it is to say the Shema and to give yourself permission to take that moment and really recite the Shema with intention and focused so that we can focus and connect to God at that moment. Menorat HaMaor. We'll continue learning this new section around the destruction, and it begins this new section that we'll be learning during the 3 weeks. Today is the second day, the day after Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, and so we'll continue learning these midrashic and Haggadik ideas on destruction and the meaning of suffering. Very, very important. So this section really begins with the beauty of the Jewish people and how precious the Jewish people are to God. We just begun yesterday how this idea that the Jewish people are so important to God and sort of the first fruits of all of creation, and how humanity and all of creation is created for human beings and all human beings for Jews, and how important the Jewish people are to God's mission of what God wants out of this world. And this midrash that the Menorat HaMaor is going to bring today, a very famous midrash, really helps us understand what this really means. So the Midrash Rabbah quotes this verse in Hosea 9:10. Israel rose in God's thought before they were created, as it is said, like the first ripe fig on a fig tree in its first season. So the idea is that the Midrash first says that Israel rises in God's thought even before anything else is created. So even though Israel was in humanity was the last to be created, in Israel certainly was a very late creation, yet it was the first in thoughts. And this actually is immortalized in the Lecha Dodi song, when we say the famous words, we say in Lecha Dodi, last in action but first in thought. We actually say that during Lecha Dodi. It's part of the joy that we inculcate on Shabbat to remember that God thought of us first, and even though sometimes we're last in terms of the actions, really God thinks of us always as the outset and as the important thing. This is proven out and shown in a midrash brought here. So Rabbi Huna said in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yitzchak, by Rabbi Yitzchak, the thought of Israel preceded everything else. So just what he said. This may be compared to a king who was married to a queen but had no son by her. One day the king was passing through the marketplace and said, "Bring ink, parchment, and pens for my son." So the king's looks like he's going shopping. Everyone knows the king has no children. Goes in and buys some writing supplies for his son. And still he says to us, basically everyone said he wants ink, parchment, and pens, yet he has no son. And still he says to us, "Bring this ink for my son." Why does he need this for his son that he doesn't actually even have? And they said to him that the king is a seer who foresees the future. Had the king not foreseen that he would one day have a son by her, he would have never said, he would never have said, "Bring pens and ink for my son." So the reason why the king is asking for this is because he knows that eventually that Israel is going to come, and that it requires a lot of planning, a lot of thought, and that Israel is going to need this Torah. And so that's what he means, of course, by the writing here, is God writing the Torah here. And that's where it goes next. So too, had the Holy One, blessed be he, not foreseen that after 26 generations Israel would receive the Torah, he would not have written in the Torah, "Command the children of Israel speak to the children of Israel before Israel even existed. Right, so imagine God sort of writing the Torah and literally writing, speak to the children of Israel, Moses, and say this, when it never happened, and it wouldn't yet, and it wouldn't have happened for another 26 generations, right? So for a very, very long time. So even at this beginning outset where humans are just fresh, God is still imagining what the Jewish people need and planning and writing the Torah, because God is thinking of how there's going to be this Jewish people and they're going to accomplish this unique mission in the world. And so again, all of this is to tell us how precious we are and how careful we should be with our actions, of how we behave and how carefully we should treat this covenant with Hashem, how important we are to Hashem, not just individually, but as a people as a whole. And that's such an important thing to remember when you're a member of Bnei Israel, a member of the Jewish person, how much God cares about us as a people, as a community, and so how we have to be so careful of what we do and how we stay loyal to the covenant. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions, and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.